Hey guys, welcome back to another Q&A. It is October 30th, 2020. Some really good questions today, actually, so we will get right into it. All right. Long-term health benefits and risk to being on TRT. All right, so benefits, well, it's pretty much gonna combat any of the risks that low testosterone might pose. Which obviously from a muscular standpoint, mood standpoint, sexual health standpoint, all those things, it's going to be negative. Also, some disease risks that might come with it as well. So, I mean, obviously, it's going to help with all of that. Benefits would be that. That would be that would be the benefits, obviously. But risk wise, so I think there's actually a lot of literature floating around on risks of long-term testosterone administration, and kind of the consensus is that there probably isn't any as long as you stay in a good physiological range. So one of the issues now, especially a lot of what I'm seeing, is these TRT clinics or HRT clinics are prescribing doses that are above normal physiological range. Whether it's 300, 400, whatever, or other drugs to go with it. Even 200 milligrams per week of testosterone is normally more than anyone needs. I mean, there might be a few people that don't metabolize the drug well, but generally, even anywhere from like 100, 150, maybe 175 at most, depending on the person and depending on how frequently it's administered and whatnot, it's really not something that needs to be overdone, which it is often. And you start ending up with potentially more cardiovascular risk, more increase in hematocrit, hemoglobin. So all those things are, lowering HDL more and more based on dose. So you're going to end up with more of those risks the higher you go. So there's really going to be no point in going higher than that. So those would probably be your risks long term. And I think that's the mistake that a lot of people make. They just think they need a lot more than they really do. AIs, that's a whole different story. A lot of risks that come along with that. So, knowing that you probably don't need one, nobody really needs one with a testosterone replacement dose, that might be the wrong statement. Most people don't need one, and they have a lot more deleterious effects than benefits. Generally, people fear estrogen, right? So, yeah. The benefits are that it gets rid of the risks of low T, which I mentioned, and then the risks are stay in normal physiological range and you should be good. Oh, and then I guess risk too, if it's going to shut you down. I mean, if that's something you're concerned about, I don't really mention that because it's all kind of obvious, but yeah, it's going to shut you down. It's going to shut you down, permanently, pretty much, can dramatically lower sperm count to nothing in some people. And if that's something you're worried about fertility wise, then that would be a different discussion. But yeah, that's obviously part of it. Best ways to boost an already healthy endocrine system. Well, if it's already healthy, then you really shouldn't need to do anything. Your endocrine system endocrine systems functions more a result of inputs like food, stress. Stress is probably the biggest one in terms of altering your endocrine system. So, best thing you can do, keep stress down. In men and women, that's going to alter your endocrine system, because endocrine is a huge word. I mean, that's for a huge multitude of systems within a system, right? We're talking about hormones. There's a lot going on. But yeah, maintain stress. The better you can maintain stress levels, sleep, all these things, the better your endocrine system's going to function. And remember that, like, pretty much every system, there are feedback loops. We start disrupting one feedback loop, we have disruption in the whole chain eventually. So, yep, there you go. How do you eat 7,000 calories on training days? I'm not sure if they're joking or if they're actually asking. You can go on my Instagram or Facebook, I think. You probably, or whatever's easier. You can just scroll down my page. I posted probably a couple months ago. Just scroll down a little bit, you'll find it. I posted sample training and non-training day diets on there. You'll see what I'm eating. It's some whole foods, some powders, some liquid, so, there's definitely a mixture there because it's such a high amount, and just kind of cry your way through the meals, let your tears just marinate the food. Yeah. I'm actually slightly less now. I'm doing a little cleanup phase. I do not miss eating that much, though it'll probably be back there again before too long, so should be lots of fun. Okay. All right. Would love to hear your thoughts on SARMS and their place in bodybuilders' arsenal. Lots of guys utilizing them during TRT to keep progress going until in between blasts, given their propensity to affect lipids. Is this kind of approach ill-advised, or can it be implemented without potentially destroying long-term health? Ooh. Well, long-term, we don't know a ton because there aren't really many, if any, long-term studies because they're not that old. Certain ones are a lot older than others, been around a lot longer than you think, but we don't have a lot of long-term human clinical trials. And yeah, this idea of using them to bridge or whatever is kind of bullshit because they're really having pretty much all the same impact on health markers that normal compounds are. Lowering lipids, right? Potentially lowering lipids. Not potentially, they will change or will skew lipids some. And also potentially some of kidney and liver function depending on dose and duration. I've seen those change as well. I just don't, this is just another case of people feeling like they're going to lose all their progress if their hormones are normal and not super high. Like they have to be on a bunch of drugs all the time and stupid fucking bodybuilder, bullshit mindset that they can't just let their body function normally. They're not going to wither away to nothing if they're saying keep progress. I mean, your hormones are still high normal range on TRT. Keep eating. Don't just drop your calories right away. Keep training and keep progressing in the gym, progressively overloading or progressing your training, whatever kind of model you're using. If you do that, you're not going to wither away to nothing. Yeah, you might lose a little bit of water, tiny bit of fullness, but you're not just wasting muscle. So it's just, like I said, it's just some bullshit, insecure bodybuilder crap. No, I wouldn't use them. Not for that, especially. I mean, they may have some potential benefits somewhere. A lot of them aren't even really selective at the doses that we want that people are going to use them at anyhow. So, yeah. Probably don't have a whole lot of place outside of certain ones, maybe in women or beginner users, maybe. Top three. My top three. So what are your top three OTC supplements? Well, my top three OTC supplements are probably, this is probably cheating because there's more than one ingredient. Morphoprime, Morphomega, probably Orthogen. All Morphogen supplements. Morphoprime, organ support, insulin sensitivity support, and also lipids, blood pressure, all that good stuff. Morphomega, a really shelf-stable omega-3 supplement, also has vitamin K for arterial health, and also has grapeseed extract and vitamin D3. And then Orthogen is a pretty complete joint connective tissue supplement. So that's cheating because there's a shitload of ingredients combined there. But I think those are probably my favorites and ones that I would use pretty much no matter what I'm doing or what else I'm supplementing in there based on my goals. Those would kind of be staples all the time. And they are staples for a lot of my clients too. So, and I think just ingredient wise, they are fantastic in dosing. So yeah, I don't know if that's against the rules or not, since there's a lot of ingredients, but we're gonna go with that. Shameless plug. All right. How to lower hematocrit. Okay, well, why is your hematocrit high? So is it because of a supplement you're taking? Perhaps some kind of enhancement supplement, perhaps? You know, those are gonna, people are like, well, I'm on this and this and this, and my hematocrit and hemoglobin and RBCs are high. I'm like, well, stop them then if you're worried about it, you know, okay? So there's that. Do you have high iron levels? That's not super uncommon in bodybuilders, especially eating high protein, which a lot of animal proteins can be high in iron, especially heme iron, depending on what you're eating. Do you have potentially like some high B vitamins that might throw RBCs up a little high? So, I mean, it could be those things, but that's, my guess is that it's likely some of those things or a combination of that, and then you can address that. Look at those levels, look at iron and ferritin levels, look at your RDW levels, look at your MCV levels, look at those things on labs, and then also you reduce dosages of things that will be causing it to go up. ARB drugs, which is generally a blood pressure drug, angiotensin receptor blocker. Yeah, I think that's something along that lines. Yes, ARBs are great. They can actually lower hematocrit and hemoglobin. So there's studies on that. Now, generally they're in studies on people with kidney dysfunction or kidney failure, but they do work in those with normal kidney function. Check those out. Something that we actually talked about on the OPD podcast with Dr. Scott Howe. It was the something harm reduction was the title of the podcast. So if you go into my Instagram, check my link tree in my bio, go to OPD, scroll down, you'll see it. Dr. Scott Howe podcast, harm reduction podcast. Very good. We talked about this very common issue, thickness of blood, right? RBCs and whatnot. All right. Anyone you work with had blood work before and after taking Nephrogen? Actually, yes. A couple people. And myself. So actually, myself, I had a GFR of 100 on my last blood work taking Nephrogen, which is fantastic. So creatinine, BUN were actually 100% normal, which is hard to do in someone with any amount of muscle and in fasted blood work especially. So yeah, it works. I mean, your main kidney markers, especially your GFR, which is a very important marker, the ingredient profile will help with that. It's also helping doing some things inside the kidneys and that you're not really seeing necessarily manifest directly on the blood work. But yeah, I have, and you should see good results. Okay, and I didn't really have bad kidney numbers before, so to even see any difference, I was pretty impressed. I never really have had any kidney marker issues. Okay. 2 more. Using Emodin to combat chronically high cortisol levels alongside with behavioral changes, pros and cons. Yeah, I think really a couple instances where Emodin really shines is maybe the end of a contest prep or fat loss phase. If they're assuming they're having really high cortisol and they're not bottomed out in cortisol, that's a good time. And then also in a time like this where someone has chronically high cortisol, probably because of behavioral lifestyle, too much exercise, whatever, it's a good way to help bring it down quickly while implementing behavioral lifestyle changes, training changes, so on and so forth. So it's like bridging it basically. You're using that to give a quick effect, and then changing, and then you're altering the root cause. So I think it's a great idea. I think it's a really good time to use it. I've actually used it on some of my female clients that have a lot of hormonal issues, but a lot of it stems from like anxiety, stress, OCD, body dysmorphia, so on and so forth. So like those things aren't necessarily a super quick fix. So we can kind of zap it a little bit at the beginning with the Emodin and then work on that stuff. So yeah, I think it's a good idea. Could definitely work in that situation. All right, last one. I've heard people mention that some people have, let's cut off a little bit, have good genetics for responding to AAS. Is this a real thing? And if so, how extreme can it be? Oh yeah, for sure real, but that's any drug, pharmaceutical drug, anything you take in, pretty much any substance that elicits any kind of effect inside your body, you might have a different genetic response to. Yeah, generally a lot of things metabolize the same in each person, right? Like you take a certain anabolic, there's a cascade, there's enzymes, all this stuff that happens that metabolize it, blah, blah, blah. But there are genetic and DNA, there's some things at the genetic level that are going to flip on and off, switches that'll flip on and off that will determine overall response. So how extreme, man, it can be super extreme. Some people literally get hardly any response in terms of like the benefits, but they get all the response in terms of the negatives. Whereas some people will get a lot of response with no negatives, and it can just really be all over the board. So you hear the word like super responder. Yeah, but like I said, that's really with any type of drug at all. People can get prescribed medications from their doctor for certain issues, and they just respond to them like crazy, or even too much sometimes, where it causes a bad effect because it's too high of a dose. So yeah, for sure. That's 100% across the board with pretty much any type of drug. Definitely. Okay. All right, guys. I think that's it for this week. Thanks for the questions. They're really good questions, and we'll talk to you next time.